Welcome to GRE Snacks, snackable episodes about the GRE, GMAT, and graduate school admissions. I'm Tyler, founder of Achievable, and we have an affordable GRE course that includes everything you need to ace your GRE, including a full textbook, videos on key topics, tons of GRE questions backed by our memory enhancing algorithm, a built in study planner and essay grader, and full length practice exam. You can try it out for free at achievable.me, and if you like it, the code podcast will get you 10% off at checkout. Now, let's get started. Today, we've got Dr. Dawn Martin with us. And Dawn, I'd love if you can introduce yourself.
I would be happy to, Tyler, and thanks for having me back. Probably what
Yeah.
your listeners would most enjoy hearing about me or learning about me is that my entire professional background has been spent in the field of enrollment management and primarily graduate school admissions. I started working in admissions in 2008 and in 1980 and continued until 2008, 28 years. And the first couple years I was in undergrad admissions, then I switched to grad admissions and was there about 20 years. During that entire 28-year period, I probably evaluated over 125,000 applications. I was the chief decision maker in a variety of fields, including journalism, business, law, medicine, arts and sciences, lots of different areas. And then in 2008, I published my book, Road Map for Graduate Study, and started my own business called Grad School Road Map. During these last 17, 18 years, I've had the privilege of working with close to 1,200 individual applicants and with thousands of prospective students, again, all of whom are looking to have a successful graduate school experience. So as you can imagine, this is a calling for me. It's not just a job. It's something I love, and as you already know, about which I love to talk.
That's great. And I mean, I think, one of the most important part of the graduate admissions process and just kind of the whole, um, you know, journey, if you will, is the research step, actually the beginning, right? And I think it's something that a lot of people don't spend enough time on. So I'd love if you could first kind of walk us through like what does it mean to really do good high quality research about and make a good graduate school list that really fits your goals and how to do all that. And then we could also talk about kind of what's changed in the last couple of years and like what are the new things, whether it's AI, I don't know if you believe in using that or not, or just other things that like can help you research and make this whole process a little bit better.
Okay, sounds good. I'm actually going to take a second to address your last question, is whether things have changed in terms of doing good research. And in all honesty, I don't think they have that much, with the possible exception that institutions continue to try as hard as they can to get their message out to prospective
Mhm.
students. They might do something a little differently. Rather than a graduate school fair, maybe they get an email address and do a little bit more email marketing to students. But the bottom line is, those institutions are still trying to persuade prospective graduate students to consider their program. I think that's the
Mhm.
bottom line here. What also hasn't changed, unfortunately, Tyler, in my opinion and in my experience, is the lack of time graduate school prospective students take to find out about programs before they submit their applications. This has gone
Mhm.
on ever since I started, and I'm sure well before I started, but this has been going on forever. It seems to me that many prospective students still allow two things to dictate their decision about where they're going to attend graduate school. And those two things are rankings and word of mouth. That's pretty
Mhm.
much the scope of their research. And as you and I know, word of mouth is just that. It's word of mouth. It's not anything very intelligible. if you're trying to make a
Mhm.
decision about where you're going to submit an application. Just knowing that a friend of yours went to this XYZ graduate school and they loved it, well, that's great, but that's their experience. That isn't yours.
Mhm.
Secondly, rankings, I could spend a whole webinar someday devoted to this topic. I am not a fan of rankings. I believe they have done far more harm than good, but yet
Mhm.
so many prospective students approach their graduate school journey already having eliminated a group of institutions, perhaps, that would have served them extremely well, if not better, than the group that they're still looking at, which is the top 5 or the top 10. And there's an assumption in the minds of many graduate students that somehow a particular ranking is the Bible, and if that this is all truth, this is
Mhm.
the end all and end all, and all they have to do is look up, the top 5 or 10 in their field, and they're done with it. There's so much more to this than that. Any major
Mhm.
decision we make in life about anything, buying a car, buying a home, with whom we're going to be involved as a dating partner or perhaps as a lifetime partner. We don't just jump into this within 3 weeks. We don't do that. But sadly, for prospective graduate students, that often happens. And so my belief still is that you serve yourself so much better if you are willing to take the time to do. It's not rocket science how to do this. It's not
Mhm.
exhausting work. It is time consuming. Yes, it is time consuming. But at the end of the day, for me, my 2 graduate school programs were amazing. And in part, it
Mhm.
was because I knew exactly what I was getting into before I ever stepped in the door. And that's something I still talk about this in almost all my webinars, is the importance of doing solid research and following a couple simple steps that can make all the difference.
Right. Well, and also not only can this make all the difference in your process, but I think it also, it's going to determine maybe where you go to graduate school, which can have a massive impact on your life. I think it's crazy how many people just kind of think that, we're going to apply to Harvard, Stanford, whatever, and then maybe something local that I've heard about, and that's like the extent that they're willing to like look into this, right?
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
yeah. So then let's get started on kind of, I mean, you mentioned like don't use rankings. I'm curious then, just kind of like what is your approach and kind of how do you recommend people start this process?
Well, thank you for asking. My very first comment in responding to that is that for me, the research process should actually take a lot longer than the application process, which means, let's just say that someone has decided that not this fall, not right now, but next fall. In fact, now that I think of it, this is a very timely moment for this discussion that we're having, because a year from now,
Hmm.
many application deadlines will start happening in various programs. Some
Hmm.
of them may have already started, but the bulk of them are between October of one year and maybe March of the following year. So let's say we're looking at some application deadlines starting in October of 2026
Hmm.
and going into March of 2027. Ideally, this is the time to start doing your research right now, a year before you submit your application. In my book, the whole first chapter of my book is devoted to this topic. This is all I talk about. I have a 12-month checklist of things to do, 12 months out, 11, 10, all the way down to 1 month. This is all before you apply. It has nothing to do with your actual submission of your application. So the
Hmm.
the first point is start early, 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 as early as you can. The second suggestion I would strongly make is that you spread the net wide. Go on, you can do an internet search, but don't do a search that says best programs in biological science. Do not let yourself do that. Rather, plug in something like graduate programs in biological science in the United States, or if you want to study abroad, you could expand it. What you'll get is a plethora of links that will take you to sites that will give you a list of these programs. And again, now, you already may know, look, I do not want to study in the southwestern part of the United States. For whatever reason, that's just not on my list. Well, then you can eliminate some of the schools that come up in that region. But that leaves the
Hmm.
southeast, the northeast, the Midwest, the northwest, the west. You still have several options. So do a more broad search for these options and then create what I call your graduate school spreadsheet and list the options there alphabetically. Now,
Right.
if you do this right, Tyler, and you do it as far ahead as I'm suggesting, you could have as many as 60, yes, 60 programs on your spreadsheet, as opposed to the 10 or 5 that most people put on, having done no research about them. They just put them on there because that's where they decided they're going to apply. And then you go through and start looking at these programs very carefully. And I would suggest at least a couple of very, very important columns for comparison on your spreadsheet. For instance, I would think you would be interested in knowing how many students are brought into this program every year. How many actual students start the program? What is the size of this
Hmm.
group of students? Secondly, what type of education are you going to receive? Is this largely a lecture style approach? Is it a
Hmm.
more teamwork oriented approach? In some cases, like business school, you may have all case study as you go through your program. Do you know this? Many students don't ever check this out. Next,
Hmm.
take a virtual tour of the campus. I can't tell you honestly. I'm not making this up. How many students would come in to see me during my open office hours at Columbia, Chicago, and Northwestern? Can you believe it? They'd walk in and say, "I hate it here. I had no idea it was like this. This is not what I expected." Well, clearly, when I found out what was bothering them, 9 times out of 10, they had done no research. All of this information was available to them. They didn't take the time to read, they didn't take the time to
Hmm.
research. So take a virtual tour of the campus. Above all, 2 other columns. Make sure you have researched the faculty with whom you will be studying. There could be some
Hmm.
outstanding faculty at an institution that's ranked number 35. But
Hmm.
some people will never get there because they won't go beyond the top 7. And last but not least, now I have a list of 55 things you can compare. This goes on and on, but these are some of the main ones. There should be a column on your spreadsheet where you are comparing what current students or recent graduates have to say about this program. Anybody who applies
Hmm.
to a program without having asked about that, that's ludicrous to me. You can get a heck of a lot of information from individuals. They'll be very honest with you. If you call you, all you have to, you can ask them other questions, but 2 questions that are very important would be, what do or did you like most and least about this program? And they should be able to give you an answer to both of those if they're being honest. And secondly, almost more important, if you had it to do over again, knowing what you now know about this program, would you still go? You'd be amazed, Tyler, at the number of alumni who say, "No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole." How sad to spend 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, whether it's master's, PhD, tens of thousands of dollars, and come out disappointed and feel
Hmm.
like you wasted your time, or this is not at all what you were looking for. How sad. How
Right.
sad. So to me, you start a year ahead of time. You don't do a rank order yet. You do an alphabetical order. The ranking comes after you've done your research, not before you started it. And then you fill in that spreadsheet and be honest with yourself. Another column is, if you reach out to them, how did they respond? Did they if you send an email and I responded back to you, Dear prospective student, thank you for your inquiry. All the questions you have can be answered on this website. Hello. Or if I got back to you, hello, Tyler. Thanks very much for reaching out to our program. Let me answer your questions. And here's an additional resource for you if you have any more. Don't hesitate to get back with us. That's a huge, how you're treated as a prospective student isn't going to change that much, if any, from how you're going to be treated once you're there. And,
Mhm.
why spend 2 years at an institution and in an environment that you do not like and that does not serve you? That seems to me to be a waste of time.
Right. Well, and I think, I mean, there's a lot of things to like kind of touch on with that, what you just said, but I think that at the heart of it is kind of this idea that basically, um, you're looking for the best fit school, and the best fit school is not necessarily the best ranked school or whatever, right? Like, I think there's a lot of factors to fit. And I mean, some of the ones that you mentioned were like how the faculty are, or how like the teaching style is, and like things like that, right? I mean, I would also say like, cost can be a factor when it comes to fit.
It can.
Um,
It can.
and then, if that school has any direct connections maybe to a company you want to go to, like I think there's a lot of different things. Also, I would say that, one other thing is just like obviously making sure that you're getting a fit as far as the subject matter. And what I mean by that is like, within business schools, there's some business schools that are focused on entrepreneurship. There's some that are focused on finance. There's some that are focused on the film industry, right? So like it's important to like keep all those things in mind. And that also can help you narrow down your list of, 50 or 60 schools down to like the ones that you really care about.
No doubt about it. And you are so right, Tyler. At the end of the day, this is not about a rankings opinion of where you should go. It's not about your parents, your professors, your friends, a significant other. Not that they don't weigh in at all. I'm just saying at the end of the day, none of these people are going to be doing this. You are. This is about
Mhm.
your sense of satisfaction and comfort. And let me say a quick word. I know we're not talking about finances today per se, but if this is going to sound so naive, I guess, but it's been so true as I've watched students over the years. If you're meant to do this program and you find the place to do it, the money will work out. It will, if you're, especially if you're part of your research, by the way, in the book, I do have a whole section in chapter 1 about how to research finances. That you can get a great head
Mhm.
start doing your, in fact, yes, you should have a column on there. What about, what do they charge, and what kind of both in school, so to speak, institutional funding can I get, but what's available to me outside of the institution? And if you start early enough, you could be opening yourself up to thousands of free dollars that you would have never known about if you didn't take the time to research them.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. Well, yeah. So then, I guess what's like the next step in kind of your journey here, or your next piece of advice?
I guess if you really are serious about wanting to go to graduate school and to be in a program that when you I just want to say when I finished at both my master's degree program and I went to Northwestern for my PhD. Honestly, Tyler, they were two of the most incredible experiences of my life. Honestly, I have no desire to do a third one, by the way. They were enough. But the point being, this was life changing. If that's what you're looking for, excuse me, what I have just shared with you, truly, I've been doing this work for 46 years. I know what I'm talking about. Doing what you and I, Tyler, have just been talking about is that's your next step. Get started. Make sure that you determine within yourself that you're going to take the time. Maybe you plan it out every week. I'm going to spend 2 hours a week on my research. You're going to dedicate that
Mhm.
time just like you do. I'm going to work out. I'm going to do this. I'm going to go to work. I'm going to go out for dinner with these folks. Whatever people have a schedule. This should become actually an absolute part of your schedule just as much as sleeping is. It should be part of your life for the next year. And I promise you, if you do this, one of my first coaching clients, she wanted to do a master's in education. I'll never forget it. I said, what are the school have you decided on your list? She said, yeah, I have 5 schools. And she told me what they were. I said, how did you decide on these? And as you might expect, she said, well, this one is ranked number 1, and my mother went here, my boyfriend is here, and it was clear, no research of her own. So as you can imagine, my first assignment for her, I said, within 2 weeks, I want you to add another 10 schools to that list, another 10
Mhm.
that through your research. And she ended up going to one of those 10. She didn't go to the first 5 that she originally was planning to apply to. And that's just one example of countless examples I could give you where it has absolutely changed. I had someone come up to me after a webinar one time. They said, "You know what? I'm going to wait a year. Thanks to what you said, I'm waiting a year, and I'm going to start my research." Now, not everyone is that drastic, but the point is, they got the message.
Right. Well, and I think like there's something to be said for like again, this is going to be 2 years, maybe 100,000 plus dollars, and the opportunity cost of your life,
Yep.
because you could be working during that time, or I don't know, like traveling or doing whatever. So like you really got to make it count. And I think that and I think the other part of it, and maybe I don't know if this maybe falls under research or not, but it's like have a plan, right? Like I think a lot of people are just like, I'm going to go to grad school. And it's like, but why are you going to go to grad school, right? Like, are you changing careers? Are you trying to get a promotion? Um, are you trying to like get a skill set or a network? Because that also determines which parts of your list you're going to focus on.
No doubt about this. It's the first thing most when I talk with most prospective students, the first thing I'll say to them, so you're thinking about grad school, and where are you in the process? And they'll say, well, I'm getting ready to get my application set up. I very rarely talk with anyone who says, well, I'm starting to do my research first. It's like they get the cart
Right.
before the horse, and
Right.
they just completely overlook this entire. They go right from I think I'll do grad school to no questions about why they're doing it and no research. They're just going to go, okay, which 5 schools am I going to try to apply to? Interestingly enough,
Mhm.
in my first chapter of the book, the research chapter, I list 7 questions you should answer to yourself before you ever do anything else if you're thinking about grad school. That's the first part of chapter 1. So you're absolutely right. This is not something when people buy a car or they go on a vacation trip or they buy a home or clothes or they think about whether or not they want to marry the person they've been dating. They don't just wake up one morning and say, okay, yeah, let's do it. I've never heard, I mean, I don't think most people do that. There's a bit of
Yeah.
thought that goes into this. There's some pros and cons and the timing and the this and the costs and all of that is involved. This is no different. But sometimes prospective students treat it as if it isn't as important as some of these others, when at the end of the day, it makes a huge difference.
Right. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Anything else that you want to cover on this topic today?
I guess um, not in terms of the actual subject matter of research, but just a gentle and yet urgent at the same time plea to anyone listening to this conversation. I promise you, if you take the time to do what Tyler and I have been speaking about today, if you're willing to take the time to do some really strong research, my book is available to you, but I'm not the only resource out there on how to do research for graduate school. I'm sure there's lots of others. But if you're willing to take the time to benefit from some resources on this and then do the work, do your due diligence, I promise you, I promise you, it will pay off. And in most cases, it's many students who started off with a list of schools and then went back and said, you know what, I'm going to broaden my research before I do this. Many times, Tyler, many of the schools that were on that original list are not on there by the end of their research. Or if they are, they're
Mhm.
way down in the ranking. It's fascinating to watch that happen. So my urgent plea is don't just listen to us today. Make the decision that you're going to do this. It can make a huge, huge difference in your educational path ultimately and in your career.
Yeah, exactly. And it's one of the most important things you're going to do. You should probably like prepare for it.
It's a no brainer, but it seems like it's often forgotten.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, thank you so much. This has been GRE Snack, hosted by Tyler from Achievable with Dr. Don Martin. And Achievable has a great online GRE course you can try for free at achievable.me.